In this module, we're going to talk about sorting and decision functions. Sorting functions are those that help us sort data. So you'll see that the functions we use were not necessarily designed to sort data, but they work very well for this purpose. Decision functions are not functions like if or choose, but rather functions like aggregate that help us bring data together to make a decision. In this section, we're going to talk about sorting functions. Now, there's really two common sorting functions, and they both work the same way. In this case, we have a small, and the way small works is I supply the array parameter with some cell range. So in this case, it's A2 through A6. And K represents the index location of the item I wish to return. And we can understand it like this. So if I have an array, and I'm asking for small, and I put a 1 in there, I'm going to get the first smallest. And if I want to return the second smallest item, I could put a 2 in there. That's what I've done in this example. If I want to return the third smallest item, I can put a 3 in there, and so on. So let's take a look at this example. I've used this formula, small, A2 through A6. Return the second smallest item. I've used that in cell D2, and I've put the formula here, and you can see that I put a 2. And if we look at this list of values, 2 is the second smallest item. If I put a 3, of course, it would be a 3. If I put a 4, in this case, it's 1 to 1. But if I put a 5, it would have returned this 10. So I bet you can guess what the other sorting function is. It's large. Now, large works in reverse. So in this case, if I want to get the first largest number, I'd put a 1, while array in this case would have to be A2 through A6 or any range you want. If I wanted to find the second largest, I'd put a 2, third largest put a 3, fourth largest put a 4, and so on. So let's take a look at this formula over here. I have large A2 through A6, and I want to return the second largest item. That's going to be A4. Makes sense? So you're probably thinking, well, how does this turn into sorting? Well, we're going to get to that in the demo. In this demo, we're going to talk about sorting in Excel tables. Sorting functions, like the ones we talked about previously, large and small, really work well with Excel tables. They really do go together, like bread and butter. We'll see that in a second. Okay, so we are looking at a data set that you hopefully have seen before. This is our tornado data set. We have the year recorded, the frequency of tornadoes for that year, and then the monthly breakdown that comprises that frequency. So the first thing I like to do when I get data like this is to create an Excel table. Hopefully you remember those. That's what we're going to do here. However, before I do that, I'm going to show you something else that's also going to be important. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right-click on year A. I'm going to insert. There's going to be a new column here. I'm going to call it index. And then I'm going to type a 1, a 2, select them, and do the autofill. Okay, now we're in better shape to put an Excel table on top of this. So the way I like to do it is very quickly with the keyboard. Start with the control, start with that shift, hit right. That's going to select the top all the way through the top usable range. I'll hit down. It's going to select everything now. So now I'll hit Control T. That's going to bring up this Create Table pop-up box. Remember to always double check if your table has headers or not. Otherwise, it will be very frustrating and annoying for you. Okay, so now we see our familiar formatted, colorful tables that I don't particularly like, so I'm going to set this up. Remember always, maybe just take a second and set things up to your fancy because, you know, you're going to have to work with it and you should like it. So here, following the guidelines I've given you previously, I am going to get rid of all formatting that I do not need. I do, however, like to format the top row, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll hit bold here, and then because these values or these columns refer to numeric data, I like to right align things, and we're not going to need these filters here, so I'm just going to turn them off. Okay, so this table is in a lot better shape. So let's say I wanted to get or I wanted to sort the total tornado column. And by sorting it, I can figure out what the top and bottom years are for the frequency of tornadoes. So in P1, I'm going to type total tornado ascending. So total tornadoes ascending, ASC. And if I want to get that data, what I can do here is I can type in equals small, because we're ascending, so we're going from smallest to largest. And I can select this column over here that's total tornadoes. Now remember, it's putting up the at here. We don't actually want the at because we want total tornadoes to be the column that gets read in. So remember, small is looking for an array. So what I can do here is I'm just going to hit Control-Shift down. I hit it too quickly there. And now you see it's selected total tornadoes. So rather than using the at, which is row by row, we are using the full column. So the other quick way to do that is just to do it by text. I'm going to select up here, and then I can go up here and remove the at, and there you go. It's the same thing. Now I can hit comma here. It's going to ask me which item I want. So remember, if I put in a 1, I get the first smallest. Put in a 2, I get the second smallest. Put in a 3, get the third smallest. So what I can do here is just select this index column over here, close the parenthesis. Now remember, tables automatically fill in formulas. So let's take a look at what's happening here. It's going to do it. It's going to run a small on this entire column. So in this first row, it's going to return the first smallest. Second row, it's going to return the second smallest. Third row, it's going to return the third smallest, and so forth. So it will automatically sort these items. So I'm going to hit enter here. And as you can see, it goes 201, 240, 260, 422. So it's all sorted here. Okay, now let's say I want to do it in descending order. Well, I can just do that to the right. And you may be wondering, why do I like doing long column names? Because remember, I like being very descriptive. So always try to be descriptive when you can. You know, if it gets a little out of hand, what you can do is wrap the text and just drag it down. And we'll just sort of size it out here, make it a little bit better looking. I don't really like these filters here. Sometimes they just show up. Okay, so to do this descending, we're going to just do the opposite. So before we used small, we're going to use large. I'm going to type in large here, and the array in this instance is going to be total tornadoes. So rather than go and select it, I'm just going to do an open bracket here, open square bracket. It's going to be right above the quotation mark on your keyboard. And you can see that it brings up all the columns I might be interested in. Well, we know the one I'm interested in, it's total tornadoes. I'm going to select that, close that bracket. I'll hit comma to move to the next parameter. And then in this case, I already know the name of what I want to use. So I'll do open square bracket again, index, and I will close it. Now, you may be noticing I messed something up here. Index needs to be an at because we're not putting in the entire thing. So let me just do that right there, at index, and I'll hit enter. And you can see now it's pulling the largest items. So now I have these values ascending and descending. Now, one thing you should keep in mind when you do something like this is that now these values here, this 201, is not necessarily mapped to the year 1950. So we've sort of allocated the table, and you should just remember that. Usually I say things like ascending or descending. Feel free to use colors or anything like that, or even a comment to give yourself a reminder. If you get in the habit of practicing developing dashboards as I have here, it all becomes second nature. Usually when you look at it, it's not confusing to think that you'll look at this and think it belongs to the item over here. So just keep that in mind. The way I like to think of it is everything really belongs to the index versus everything belongs to the year. So let's say you want to know the top 10 years and bottom 10 years for tornadoes. So I have the skeleton of what we're trying to do laid out. So let's go a little bit farther. So what I want here is I want the years to be here, and I want the values to be here, and I want some sort of numeric 1 through 10 over here. So let's just start building that. So here I have the skeleton for the top 10 years for tornadoes and bottom 10 years for tornadoes. And things like this appear on dashboards all the time. We always want to know the top 10 or bottom 10 of sales, performance, things like that. So let's talk about how we're going to build that. So in this first column here, I kind of want the numbers 1 through 10, 10 through 1. Over here, I'm going to want the year, and over here, I'm going to want the value to be placed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with 1, 2. We'll drag that down. And that gives us our 1 through 10. Now, if I want to get the top 10 years, so I want to get the most, right, I'm going to use the column that was total tornadoes descending. So what I want to do is I want to use index on the total tornadoes descending to get the top 1 through 10 years. Now, before I do that, I actually forgot to do something. And hopefully out there you thought, he didn't do his rule number 1 for tables. Demerit, I'm going to write the the producers of this course and demand that Jordan follow his rules and change the name of tables. So that it was going to be table 2. So I'm going to change that to data. And I like that name. It has a nice easy ring to it. So it's just going to be data. So here in C3, I'm going to come back. I'll do equals index. And now what I can do is I can say data. And that's going to get us access to that Excel table. I'll do open bracket. That's going to ask us which item we want. So what I'm going to do is scroll all the way down. We have total tornadoes descending right here. I'll select that. And then here I'm going to hit parenthesis. And that is going to give us the row num that Excel is asking for. So I'm just going to select this one over here. Then I'm going to close the parenthesis, hit enter. And there, look, we have 1,297. That's our first largest. I'll drag this all the way down. And now we see we have 1 through 10. Now this is interesting, but it would be a lot more interesting if we understood the year in which these tornadoes took place. So how are we going to be able to find the year? Well, here's what we can do. We need to match this value back into the original total tornadoes list. Now once we have that match value, it's going to tell us which record location that year is placed. And then we can use index on that to pull the year out. So I know that sounded confusing, so let's try it. So first I'm going to start with match. And I'm going to select this as my lookup value. And then as my array value, I'm going to do data. So that's our backend database. I'll hit open square bracket. And then I'm going to select total tornadoes. That's the original raw data. I'll hit close square bracket. And then here I'm going to do a 0 because we don't want to do any other fancy type of matching. We just want to do an exact match. So I'll hit enter here and we see that it's at item 43. It's the 43rd record in that database. So how do we pull out an item at location 43? Well, the answer is with index because index asks for a row and a column, right? So what I'll do here is I'll go into equals. I'll type index, open parenthesis, and then the array that this is looking for is going to be the year. So what I'll do is I'll type in data, open square bracket, and I'll just type in year. Close square bracket. And you see it got rid of the match. And don't worry, I know I did this out of order, and that was just for explanation purposes. When we do the bottom 10, we'll do it in order, and you'll see it all come together. So I'll do close parenthesis right here, hit enter, and now it's telling us that happened in 1992. So if we were to just kind of tighten this up here, let's wrap that, just see how tight we can get it. Maybe do one of these. I really like margin center. I know a lot of people don't, but now look at that. Now we have a choice. We can keep these 1 through 10. We could hide it. There's a lot of things we could do. So let's do the same for the bottom 10. So the first thing we're going to do is grab that value. So that's going to be equals index, and in this case we want total tornadoes ascending, so we'll type in data. That's the name of our database. We'll do total tornadoes ascending, close square bracket, comma, and then we're going to select the index we're interested in. Now note, I could have actually just reused this index over here, but I just built a new one just to show us how to do it. I know this isn't the prettiest that we're working with right now, but we kind of have the mechanics exposed just to see what's going on. And as we develop further, you'll see everything gets a little tighter. Now, all that being said, I'm going to close this parenthesis here, hit enter. You see it pulls 201. That's the smallest year. I'll drag this all the way down. You can see that it is going from 1 through 10, from smallest to largest. So remember before, we have to use a match index dynamic to find this value, or I should say an index match dynamic to find this value within the original list, and then pull the record key associated with that. In this case, the key is years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in equals index. The array that I want to pull from is going to be data, year, and then I'm going to hit comma. Now it's looking for that row number. So to get the row number, we need to use match to match it. So I'll type in match. Here's the lookup value, 201. We need to use the lookup array, so I'll use data, open square bracket. The lookup array in this case is total tornadoes. Close square bracket. Remember the match type. We don't care about anything fancy here. It's just going to be a 0. So that closes out the match. That returns the row. We're good on all the parameters we need for index. I'm just going to close out the parenthesis right here, and you see it pulls out 1950. And now what I'm going to do here, I'll just make this kind of look the same. We'll merge that. Why not use the format painter? Everyone loves the format painter. And you can see it's similar now. So if you wanted, you could hide these rows or columns and then add a buffer, something like that. Make it a little fancier. But what I want to show you here is that the bottom and top years for tornadoes, to build this was actually very easy. It only took a few formulas, it took a few clicks, and once you get the hang of it, it all seems to make sense. It's just a few steps. So just to review though the benefits of it, let's take a look at this value here. So we see index total tornadoes descending. Notice that when I drag this all the way down, I didn't have to deal with a range that was moving from the array that I wanted to look at. So this is a common mistake we make with VLOOKUP and index. We forget to hit F4 and lock it in, and we drag it down, and it drags the whole array down with it. One of the cool things about using tables here is that it locks it in. So it is a structured reference. Also, it's kind of easier to understand what's going on. So if you have a basic idea of what index does, we see that this is array here, and this array element, when using tables, actually describes what I'm pulling from. It's not just A1 through A10. And now if we go back to the table, we also have an interesting dynamic, because these values filled in automatically. And in doing it this way, we were able to name the column something that makes sense, that is intuitively understanding, that we can use later. Now, if you also recall, I talked about the ITP dynamic, and that's information, transformation, presentation. So this is the information right here. We've done some transformation to it over to the right. And then on the dashboard, all we're doing is presenting to it. So we're not actually changing the values. We're just pulling them from somewhere. So index and match help us report. So that's how we're following, in this case, the information, transformation, presentation dynamic.